Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Debbie Sterling, for those of you who don't know, is an engineer, entrepreneur, and like I mentioned, she's the CEO of GoldieBlox, a toy company that designs toys for young girls. And at a time when girls' toys are pink and frilly and glittery, Debbie created something monumental. GoldieBlox is a company focused on disrupting the pink aisle. And Debbie is super cool. She was named Time's Person of the Moment and was on Fortune's list of 40 under 40. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I'm from Rhode Island. I grew up in a really small town, and I went to pretty average public school. And I remember actually the very first time I heard the word engineering was when I was a senior in high school applying to college. And my math teacher, she said, I think you should study engineering when you go to college. And I remember that moment because I actually didn't know what engineering was. And I pictured an old man driving a train. And I thought, why does she think I should be a train driver? And even though I liked math a lot, it was one of my favorite subjects, I also really loved art and writing, and I always considered myself a very creative girl. And so I didn't know what engineering was, but I didn't think it was for me. But luckily, I got into Stanford, and this was a really big deal. It's a very hard school to get into, and I was one of the first kids from my high school to ever get in. And so when I went out to Stanford, I knew it was the opportunity of a lifetime, and I didn't want to waste it. And so I decided to take an engineering class. I was really intimidated when I first went in because just like you, when I saw kind of all the posters for the class, I didn't think it was for me, and I wasn't sure if I would like it. But luckily I went in, and in that first engineering class, I finally learned for the first time what engineering was. And basically it was learning how to be a problem solver. It was learning how to invent things to help people and make the world better. And that was so creative. And it was just exactly what I wanted to do with my life. So I decided to study engineering. The only problem was there weren't very many girls in my classes, and that always bugged me. So after I graduated, I decided that the thing I was going to invent to make the world a better place would be toys to show all the girls growing up how fun engineering really is, and maybe let some of them have that spark that it took me a really long time to have.
And what was it like starting GoldieBlox? Was it an idea that people loved, or was it something that people were skeptical to try?
So at the beginning, when I first started, I thought, okay, I want to give every girl in the world that gift that I had when I first took the engineering class. When I realized how fun it was, I wanted to give that to girls. But at the beginning, it was kind of like, I don't know what that is yet. I have to start inventing and brainstorming. And so I did a lot of prototyping, and I brought my very best idea to the New York Toy Fair, which is the toy industry's biggest event. And I showed my first prototypes to some of the biggest people in the toy industry, who were mostly old white men. And they all looked at me with pity in their eyes, and they said, didn't you know that girls don't like building? They said, girls just want to be princesses. They're never going to want to build. And I was so mad. I almost wanted to punch them in the face, but I didn't. I just went home and I said, these guys are wrong. Girls absolutely are capable of building and inventing and making great things, and we need to encourage them to do that. And so I just decided that I wasn't going to listen to them, and instead I put GoldieBlox, my toy prototype, up on Kickstarter. Do any of you know what Kickstarter is? So Kickstarter is a website where you can go and make a video and share your idea with the world. And so I put it up online to see if people really wanted it. And believe it or not, I raised almost $1 million online with GoldieBlox before I had made a single toy. So I definitely proved all of those old toy men wrong.
And what is it like for you now to go into a store and see GoldieBlox there, and What's just the feeling that you get?
So I remember on the very last day of the Kickstarter campaign, I got a call from Toys R Us. And they said, hey, we saw your Kickstarter video. And in the video, I was actually walking down the pink aisle of Toys R Us, holding up a sign of GoldieBlox next to Barbie, saying, back GoldieBlox, and maybe one day GoldieBlox will be on the shelves next to Barbie. And so Toys R Us said, you're making us look bad. And, we don't want to only sell Barbie. Like, we want girls to have more options, too. And so before I knew it, GoldieBlox was on the shelves of Toys R Us nationwide. And it was amazing. And I remember the first day walking into the store, seeing it, and I had really mixed emotions. For the one thing, as soon as I saw it, I felt so proud. Because I knew in that instant, like, anything is possible, right? Anything is possible. On the other hand, I realized in that moment how much more work there still was to do, because GoldieBlox was just one box in a sea of pink, and I realized in order to really reach the social mission and the goal, I had to keep pushing, keep getting the word out, keep making the toys better, keep making it as fun as I could for girls. So, it was a mixed emotion, so much pride and so much determination to keep going.
And so you mentioned like everything in the aisle is pink, but what really is the problem with the pink aisle?
These are such good questions.
Thank you.
So I think, here's what I think the problem with the pink aisle is. So don't get me wrong, I don't hate the color pink. I actually wear pink all the time. When I was little, my favorite movie was The Little Mermaid. I often dressed up as a princess for Halloween. I don't think any of these things are wrong, and I think it's a mistake to say anything that's feminine is a bad thing. However, what I do have a problem with is when you go to the toy store, there is very much a designated section that is for girls that is all pink. And there's a lot of stereotypes there of what it means to be a girl. That it's the ironing boards and the tea sets and the princesses and the fashion stars, and that's all that girls would like. That's what I have a problem with, because I know that girls are very multifaceted and have many interests. You might like glitter and pink, but you also might like karate, and that's absolutely fine and acceptable, and of course that's what girls are into, many things. The other thing I have a problem with is that the blue aisle, which is what's supposed to be for boys, has a lot of things that are really educational. A lot of construction toys, math and science stuff, action heroes, and a lot of those things they're good, strong role models. There's great lessons in terms of motor and spatial skills building, all kinds of things that help prepare you growing up to succeed in math and science and engineering. And I felt that that shouldn't be labeled as for boys. Because everybody should experience that and have more advantages in life. Because learning those, I'm sure many of you may have heard the word STEM, with science, engineering, technology, and math. These are skills that are really important to learn and be interested in, especially now because the world is changing. We all know now with technology, the world is changing faster than we know it. And any job you have, whether you become an engineer or a fashion designer or a CEO, it's important that you understand STEM because it plays a role in everything.
And so, like, us girls, we're sort of the generation of, or we are the generation of tomorrow, and do you have any advice for us to do something as great as you did, and to just, if we want to just grow up and follow our passions?
Well, I have a few pieces of advice. One thing that it took me a really long time to learn, I was always intimidated by physics, I was intimidated by engineering, because I thought it was only for people who are geniuses. And I didn't think I was a genius, so I thought I'd never be good at it. It took me a really, really long time to learn that that's not true, that those classes and topics can be challenging, but just because you don't get it right away doesn't mean you won't. Most people, I would say 99.9% of people, are not born knowing this stuff. You have to apply yourself and learn and challenge yourself. And that's something that I learned. It took me a long time to learn. But once I did, I learned how rewarding it is when you challenge yourself and really try something that's hard. And you might not get, the straight A's at it. You might not get it right away. But if you don't give up and you keep trying and you go and get extra help, or work in groups and get help from your friends, like when you actually try something hard and that's really, really hard, and you accomplish it, you feel amazing. That's how you get your confidence. Mm-hmm. And that's how you can find new passions that you didn't know that you had. And so I feel so lucky that I discovered my passion, which was GoldieBlox and getting girls excited about STEM. But I wouldn't have gotten there had I not put myself out on a limb and tried many, many things that I didn't think I would like.
And then, so what role do you think then that having confidence played in your success?
So I think it played a huge role. I think the first step was when I actually tried engineering, and I didn't think I'd like it, and I didn't think I'd be good at it. And a lot of times in my classes, actually, it seemed like a lot of the boys were smarter at it than me. When I didn't give up, and when I kept trying, and when I actually graduated from Stanford in engineering, I was so proud. And it made me realize that, when you set your mind to something, you actually can achieve it. And I was proud because it was hard, and I did it. And that gave me the confidence to then afterward decide, okay, I want to take the engineering skills that I learned and actually apply them to something that could help people. And that's when I came up with the idea to make a toy. And when people said, girls are never going to like this is never going to sell, construction toys for girls will never go mainstream, I think because I had already overcome one mountain before, where I was like, well, I know this is going to be hard, but I'm going to give it a try anyway. And I applied myself and I kept going. That enabled me to put up that Kickstarter and prove them wrong, and that gave me even more confidence. And so once you kind of tackle one obstacle and get the confidence, then you just keep going and going, and basically you just learn grit. I think if I just gave up after failing a few times, there's no way I would have been able to be where I am today.
And so then what is it like to design toys that have an impact on so many girls' lives?
So actually, I thought it would be fun to share with you some of the earliest toy prototypes that I made for GoldieBlox. I brought them here today. So here, I'll share with you some of them because I think it really says a lot. So at the beginning, when I first started trying to design toys, I was just thinking, what would I have wanted to play with when I was a little girl? And I did a bunch of research, and I met with a bunch of girls and boys and watched them play and observed them to try to come up with ideas. And one thing really early on that I found, in a lot of the girls I met with and asked them what their favorite toys were, a lot of them said, actually, I love books. Let's read together. And I noticed that girls really loved books and characters and stories. And meanwhile, all the Legos and Connects and building sets, they didn't have any stories or characters. It was just a bunch of pieces to build, a big tower or roller coaster. So my idea was, why don't I combine stories with building? Maybe that would get girls interested. And so the very first thing I did was I started actually writing a story. And so as I mentioned before, I always loved writing and art. And so I actually drew a picture of a girl named GoldieBlox, and she was going to be the girl engineer. And this is one of my very first books that I just wrote and illustrated myself. Have you met the girl named GoldieBlox? She likes to think outside the box. And so I started writing a story about a girl that would invent something to solve a problem. And in this story, the problem was that Goldie had a dog named Nacho who was crazy and always chasing his tail. And she wanted to invent a machine to help him chase his tail. And so Goldie, very curious inventor, started thinking, okay, well, what are things that spin? So here was the first book. She had a yo-yo, a music box, a carousel, a fan, and decided I'm going to pick the music box. That spins. Maybe I can learn how to make things spin. So she tears it apart, and she learns that it works with a wheel and an axle. And so her invention was using a wheel and an axle, she was going to spin the dog. And so along with the story, I started prototyping the toy pieces that she would use to build the machine to spin the dog. And so I needed a wheel and an axle. So I found a thread spool as my wheel. And I needed an axle, so I went to the hardware store and got a wooden dowel. And of course I decorated it, because why not? And just with these materials, I was able to build just a little machine of a wheel spinning on an axle. And then I needed a board for it to spin on, so hardware store, went and bought a pegboard. Probably cost like 50 cents. And you can stick the axle into the pegboard, put the wheel on top, and then it spins. Then I needed a nacho, so I made one out of clay. Here he is. And when you set him on top, nacho spins around. And then last but not least, I added a ribbon and some Velcro where we could spin nacho with the ribbon, and when you pull it, it makes him spin. So this was a really simple building exercise where I had Goldie building this machine in the book, and I kind of created these pieces. And I just started testing this prototype that I made with kids. Did they like the story? Could they follow along? Could they build along? Many of my early prototypes and tests were a disaster. But I didn't give up. I just observed and I kept improving it along the way. And finally, after many, many tests and many failures, I started to notice things that would work. And I started to get more and more confidence, and we can pass this around, with my toy prototypes. So much so that we started taking it from just these rough prototypes into actual pieces that were manufactured. So that thread spool that I started with turned into a wheel, and it started to get a little more advanced as I went along. And some of these characters, we started actually working with sculptors to make them based on my drawings. And by the end of it, we went from those prototypes to the actual toy. And thanks to all the backers on Kickstarter, we were actually able to make these, and this is what is now sold today. It won 2 Toy of the Year awards.
Wow.
And, really came a long way from kind of those rough prototypes, and I'll pass this around, to the final product. But the amazing thing is that it all just started with stuff that I could find around the house.
Do you still write and illustrate your own books?
So that's a great question. I made the decision early on that as much as I loved writing and illustrating, I wasn't the best person in the world to do that. And I didn't enjoy doing the illustrations. It was almost like a chore, and I was surprised by that. I thought it was gonna be my favorite part, and it wasn't. And so I ended up hiring great artists who I loved, and they do the illustrations now. And I've found great writers who I love, and they're doing the writing. And that's really part of being an entrepreneur and a CEO, is being able to, it was great because I started it, but in order to build a business and a company, your job really becomes finding the best people in the world to work with you to help make everything even better.
I got like 1 or 2 fun questions. So, what's your favorite type of food?
Ooh. That is a good one. I think one of my favorites is pancakes.
Do you like pancakes and bacon, pancakes? I don't know, have you ever tried pancakes with ice cream?
No, I've never. That sounds amazing.
You should try it. It's very good. It's one of my favorites. And what's your favorite type of music?
Classic rock.
Whoa. Wait, what is that?
Oh my god. Maybe we'll play some after.
Yeah, we'll play some while doing that activity.
Okay.
Is it like calm yet?
It's not very calm, no.
No? Okay.
We'll play some. Go ahead.
Which band?
Oh my gosh. Well, like Led Zeppelin and the Beatles. And
Rolling Stones?
Rolling Stones. Absolutely.
No idea.
You mentioned grit. How do you get grit? I think that is very important to be an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah. If you don't have grit, you can't succeed as an entrepreneur because basically, when you're an entrepreneur, you're going to get a lot of no's. Even if you believe in something so much, and part of being an entrepreneur is convincing other people to believe in what you're doing too, and kind of joining you. And the truth is, when you innovate and you come up with something new, not everybody's going to get it or believe in it. And they might shut you down. They might tell you, they don't think you can do it, or it's not possible. And if you just take them at face value and you believe them and you let them get you down, you can never succeed. And the other thing that's kind of scary when you're an entrepreneur is you're not going to get it right every time. And you're trying stuff that you've never done before, maybe no one's ever done before. So there's no right answer. And because of that, you're going to try a bunch of stuff that's not going to work. And if you try something that doesn't work and you let that get you down and you let that stop you and you give up, then you can't succeed. And so I think if you put yourself out there, and even if you fail or mess up and you get over it and you realize that that's okay, and actually sometimes failing and messing up is a good thing because you learn something, then I think the achievements you can have down the road are even bigger than that. But I've noticed a lot of girls are afraid to fail, or afraid to try something because they think they're not going to be good at it, and they would rather not try at all than mess up or fail. And so that's what I hope all of you, if you get anything out of today, I hope all of you learn that it's not embarrassing to put yourself out there and try something new. And even if you mess up, that's not the end of the world. The worst thing that you can do is just not try something because you think you're not going to be good at it. Because you never know what you're going to be great at. I didn't think I was going to be good at engineering, and a lot of people didn't believe in me. But hey, I ended up engineering a toy that sold over 1 million all over the world, and girls really needed that. So I'm really glad that I stuck with it. Go ahead.
So you had mentioned that you liked your engineering classes, but the thing you would have liked better was if there were more girls in them. So that might be helpful for the girls in the room. Like, how did you motivate yourself? It can be kind of isolating sometimes to be doing a class or an activity where you're the only one, you might be the only girl, or you might be the only person similar to yourself or something. How did you motivate yourself to get past that and maybe make relationships with the other people in the class or not? Or did you feel like you just had to do it on your own?
That's a great question. So a lot of the classes I was one of the only girls. And what didn't work was when I isolated myself and just tried to do all the work all by myself. So I'd go back to my dorm room and I'd be up all night trying to read the books, and I didn't always understand it. And then I would get down on myself and just think, I'm not smart enough, I can't get this, I can't do it. That was the worst thing. When I had the breakthrough, it was when I went to office hours, or I'd go to the teacher or the teaching assistants and ask for help. For a while, I was too proud. I didn't want to admit when I didn't get something. I didn't want anyone to think I was stupid. And so as soon as I realized, hey, it's okay, I'm going to raise my hand and say, hey, I don't get it. I'm not embarrassed. I don't get it. I need help. As soon as I started doing that, everything changed. The other thing that helped a lot was doing study groups. And so, because I'm a very social and collaborative person, and so for me, again, the isolation was what didn't work for me. But as soon as I found people in my classes that wanted to do study groups with me, then everything changed, because we actually had fun together. And then I started to learn that the other people in my classes, they didn't get it right away either. We all had to learn together, and that helped me realize that, maybe we had more in common than I thought. I ended up having 2 sort of best friends all throughout my engineering major. One was a girl and one was a guy, and we did everything together. We, late night study sessions, we always worked on, whenever you could pick your group, we always worked together in groups. And we had a blast. And it was those friendships that really got me through.
There's a question over here.
Did when you were actually manufacturing or designing the product, did it, after you did it, did it actually change you? And if that is change you like a lot, do you find new talents, things like that, and learn something new? And if that's a yes, then what did that change about you, and how did that change you?
That's a great question. I learned a lot from the manufacturing process. So at the beginning, some of the prototypes that I passed around, these were just thread spools and ribbon and clay, and things that are kind of easy to find around the house and put together. And it was great to have that because I didn't have a lot of money to spend, and so it enabled me to really test stuff and figure out what I wanted it to be. But as soon as I had a prototype that worked and it was ready to go to the manufacturing stage, then things got pretty serious. Because number one, manufacturing something is really expensive. Just to make one single prototype from the factory of kind of the clay and ribbon that I had cost $5,000. And that was the biggest check I had ever written in my whole life, spending $5,000 to take something into manufacturing. And that was one thing I learned about myself was, wow, this is almost my whole life savings that I'm spending. But I learned that I really believed in what I was doing. And so I invested my own life savings into it because I believed in it. But then I believed in it so much, I went out and asked other people for money. And that was something I'd never even thought I'd be willing to do that, asking other people for money. It felt weird. But I learned about myself was that what I believed in, it was bigger than me and it was important. So much so that actually it was okay to ask other people for money because they were helping a cause that's a great cause. The manufacturing was really complicated and I learned a ton just about the complexity. It was real engineering. It was really challenging. Going back and forth a million times with the factory to get the pieces fitting just perfectly right. It was an amazing experience. I've learned so much, and the fun part is building my business. I still learn every day. Not a day goes by that I don't learn something new.
There's one last question over there.
What is grit?
Oh, that's a great question. So, grit, if I had to define it, I would say that it's not giving up. It's when people tell you no, that you can't do it, when things don't seem like they're going to work out, when things don't go the way you planned, it's not backing down. If a door closes in your face, you don't just turn around and walk home. You find another door. I would say that's what grit is.